Good morning, everyone. Welcome, board members and guests, to the Wednesday, December 1st, 2021 meeting of the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority. We welcome the public to in-person participation. In addition, remote teleconferencing participation is available to board members and the public pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54953E due to the COVID-19 state of emergency proclamation and recommendations for social distancing. Public comment. There will be multiple opportunities throughout this meeting for public comment. After I open an item for public comment, those joining us by Zoom meeting, webinar, can signal they wish to speak by clicking the raise hand button on the middle bottom of the Zoom webinar window. If you are joining over the phone, you can press 9. Sparta staff will call out individuals one by one who have indicated they wish to speak. I believe that's *9, am I correct? Yeah. For those joining us in person, you are welcome to come to the podium. We ask that anyone making a public comment state their name and city of residence. You will then have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and we will notify you when your 3 minutes are up. If you experience technical difficulties and are unable to provide public comment during the meeting, please email your comments to Sol Sable, our clerk at ssabol@pctpa.net. Board action. Because this meeting is being conducted via teleconference, all votes will be roll call votes. Board members, we ask that you state your name prior to making a motion or seconding a motion for the record. Once an item has been moved and seconded, I will request the clerk call the roll to vote. Thank you. Now please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we'll move to item C. Oh, we need to have a roll call, sorry.
Broadway.
Here.
Holmes.
Here.
Howdeshelt.
Here.
Joyner.
Here.
Now we'll move to item C, AB 361, remote teleconferencing. Mr. Lucan, is this your?
Deanne Gillick, our legal counsel, will present this item.
Okay.
Hi, Deanne Gillick, General Counsel for Sparta. As you are aware, with AB 361, the board can continue to meet with the relaxed teleconference rules. However, due to the state of emergency and the state recommendations for social distancing. However, you need to periodically consider the state and the circumstances of the state of emergency and the ability to continue to meet safely in person, and whether or not there's continues to be state recommendations for social distancing. Those circumstances have been evaluated. The circumstances still warrant meeting remotely, and we ask that you adopt findings to allow for the continued teleconference meetings. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members? Anyone in the public have a question? See none? Okay.
Approval of the item. Broadway second.
Okay, Joyner makes motion and Broadway seconds to approve item C, AB 361, remote teleconferencing. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Broadway.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All righty, we'll move to item D, approval of action minutes for October 27, 2021.
Move approval. Broadway second.
There's a motion and second to approve item D of action minutes of October 27th, 2021. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Broadway.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move to item E, agenda review. Is there anything in the agenda that needs to be removed?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we would respectfully request that the board pull item H, the public hearing on, to consider and adopt resolution by necessity to acquire property and temporary construction easement for the I-80 Auxiliary Lanes project. This item actually recorded at the county recorder's office about 30 minutes ago, and no action at this time is needed. Your prior action on the project was sufficient. So we would ask you to pull this item. I would note that our staff, led by David Meckel, worked tremendously hard on this item. It took a lot of staff time and effort to put this item together as a contingency in case the property transaction could not be executed, and so he led a team of Dock and Engineering, our engineer and their subconsultants, and our legal counsel, Deanne Gillick, to put this together. And so a lot of hard work, but we're very happy with the result, which was that it recorded.
Okay, so the request is to remove item H. We don't have to take action on that. We can just, we don't have to.
It's just gone.
Okay, thank you. This is item F. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the Sparta board on this item, on any item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move to item G, the consent calendar. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested citizen may request an item to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Any issues with the consent calendar?
No.
Hearing none, then we'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Broadway makes the motion. Mr. Joyner seconds. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Broadway.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes,
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Now we'll move to item A, mini workshop on Nexus study analysis framework for Tier 1 and Tier 2 impact fee update. Mr. White.
Great, thank you, Chair and Board of Directors. Today, the intent of our workshop is to look at some of the fundamental assumptions that are contained in our travel demand model, and to assure that we really share the same collective expectations of the inputs that are going into the model, because the model is going to form the basis for when we calculate fees for the various Sparta fee districts within the area. When we kicked off this process back in late 2020, our goal was to overhaul the existing travel demand model that was built in the early 2000s. We wanted to update it to reflect current travel patterns. We also wanted it to be more useful as a consistent tool for our local agencies to use for traffic studies, environmental impact reports, or even to test projects against Senate Bill 743. So our consultant WSP and the staff have completed their first major milestone, which is actually to update the travel demand model. The travel demand model uses big data from cell phone sources and application data to go through a process by which they kind of anonymize travel and trip patterns and trip links, and so we can utilize that information to help us better estimate the true travel patterns that exist today. The model itself met or exceeded 6 of the tests that needed to be completed to make sure that the model itself could replicate traffic counts that we had collected on the ground. And we have a pretty high confidence with that the model will do well in our use for updating the fee study. Now, also identified in your packet, the travel demand model has both a base year set in 2019 as well as a future year set in 2040. The base year itself really is a pre-COVID setting, so it looks at all the housing development as well as traffic volumes that occurred at that point in time. I know we've had discussions here at this board, and we've had, amongst others, in the region about the staying power of the pandemic and how long it will continue to affect travel patterns or our job locations. And at this point in time, we anticipate, because this is really a long-range plan that's looking out to at least 2040, if not longer, when you consider really the full build-out of some of our specific plans in the South Placer area, it could be longer. But we anticipate that traffic and travel patterns will get back to normal, pre-pandemic conditions. Not to say that there may not be some additional staying power that the pandemic may have and continue to influence our patterns for maybe the next year or so. We just don't know. But with the Mitigation Fee Act, we are required to come back and update our fees periodically. So if we find out that patterns have not changed and maybe there's a longer impact and disruption, we can update those at a later point in time. But for this, at this point in time, we anticipate things will come back to normal at some point. So to really wrap this up, I'm going to introduce staff from WSP who will go through the presentation and be able to help answer any questions you may have about Sparta, the fee program, the 11 projects that are contained in the program itself, and frankly that many of those projects currently in our program are seeing congestion today and could benefit from improvements. So just keep that in mind with, yes, the pandemic has changed things, but we do have projects out there today that are over capacity or nearing capacity and would see definite immediate benefits from improvements from this program. So with that, I'd like to introduce Linda Meckel. Linda is with WSP. She's been there for about a year, but prior to that, she has been with the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, as well as the San Francisco Transportation Authority, working on a variety of different transportation projects. She's also joined by Don Hubbard, who is a project manager on this project, and he's a senior technical principal in transportation modeling, and you've met him before on different presentations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Linda to go ahead and continue on the presentation.
All right, thank you. Hi, Linda.
Hi, thank you, Aaron. Good morning, everyone. My name's Linda Meckel, and I'm a senior transportation planner with WSP. Next slide. Today, we're going to talk about the project status and the progress made to date, travel patterns analyzed from the streetlight data, our input assumptions for 2040, including the development subject to the fee programs, and then how those assumptions and proposed projects impact future traffic conditions. And finally, we are happy to answer any questions you may have. Next slide. Okay, so let's start with the current status of the project. This flow chart shows the key steps for updating the model in the Nexus study. As of today, we have finished the traffic model updates, and we are now halfway through the Nexus study update. In the first two steps, we prepared the land use and transportation network assumptions for 2040. In steps 3, 4, and 5, we then look at the relationship between the proposed land development and the current transportation network and the resulting future conditions created by individual proposed projects. For steps 6 and 7, we are working with PCTPA staff to prepare financial assumptions. And next, using the above results, we will be able to compute draft fees. Note that step 9 includes policy options as an input into the fee calculation. This includes things like whether the Tier 2 program is Nexus-based or done as a flat fee. Next slide. An important step in a travel model update is to calibrate the model to typical travel patterns. To do this, staff analyze data from streetlight data, which uses anonymized cell phone data. 2 notes. 1, the streetlight data represents pre-COVID travel patterns. And second, streetlight data shows the choices travelers make given our current roadway network. New options will change choices and travel patterns. Next slide. This slide shows the distribution of trips originating in the Lincoln-Sparta district for weekdays pre-COVID. This shows us the strong interaction between residential areas in Lincoln and the employment and shopping destinations in Roseville and Rocklin. 5 out of 6 trips from Lincoln go south either to or through Roseville and Rocklin. I also want to note that 22% of trips are coming into Roseville from several routes. Next slide. This slide shows the distribution of trips originating in the Rocklin-Sparta district for weekdays pre-COVID. 38% of trips go to Roseville, and 37% of trips go south on routes over the Sacramento County line. Next slide. This slide shows the distribution of trips originating in the Roseville-Sparta district for weekdays pre-COVID. Of note, 70% of trips go south over routes into Sacramento County. Next slide. This slide shows the distribution of trips using State Route 65 going into the I-80 interchange. This data is from midweek days in the spring and fall of 2019, so pre-COVID, and we divided the roadway users into Sparta fee areas. Roseville and Rocklin account for 68% of the users, with 6% from Lincoln and 8% from the other 6 fee districts. 18% of users are from non-Sparta areas. So not only do we use streetlight data to analyze existing travel trends, but we also use it to calibrate the model so that existing travel patterns are represented accurately. The Nexus study is about future travel that will be influenced by new development, new roadways, and changes in travel patterns. Next slide. So next we're going to talk about the assumptions used for 2040. And 2040 was selected as our horizon year because it corresponds to the latest regional forecast from SACOG. Next slide. We took the 5 county SACOG forecasts as their base assumptions to have a more comprehensive view of patterns extending beyond Placer County. Our model uses 2 sets of assumptions, land use and the transportation network. Most often we use the model to analyze traffic impacts for EIRs. For this purpose, we use the future transportation network that is adopted in the regional transportation plan and the land use assumptions from the Sustainable Communities Strategy. The SACOG Sustainable Communities Strategy is prepared to meet state requirements and assumes a limited build out of South Placer County through the year 2040. For the Nexus study, we are using a different set of assumptions that show a greater build out of projects that we know are in the pipeline and are not tied to a horizon year. Next slide. So the RTP includes hundreds of projects, but most important to us are the I-80 State Route 65 interchange, State Route 65 widening, 3 BRT routes, and the Capital Corridor set of tracks between Sacramento and Roseville. Next slide. The Sparta land use assumptions include the build out of South Placer County. This is consistent with previous Nexus studies. These projects are reasonably foreseeable and will make use of the road network. The purpose of this exercise is to ensure that the road system can accommodate all users from this level of development and that the project costs are shared accordingly. Next slide. This graph shows the assumed new residential growth by Sparta fee districts. 75% is single family, with most of that growth taking place in Roseville West, Lincoln, and Dry Creek fee zones. Next slide. This graph shows the assumed new non-residential growth by Sparta fee districts. So this is land uses like shopping centers, offices, and industrial parks, generally our major land use destinations. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about the future land use, how the future land use performs with different roadway scenarios and projects. Next slide. So the big picture. Our current roadway network will not be able to sustain our future land use build out. We see increased congestion in the following problem areas: the I-80 corridor, State Route 65 corridor, north-south connections to Sacramento County, and east-west connections to Sutter County. On the next few slides, we're going to show how specific proposed roadway projects are going to solve some of these issues. Next slide. So first, we see the existing conditions that the Placer Parkway project is looking to alleviate. Next slide. Here is the proposed State Route 65 widening project. Next slide. Here is the Sierra College Boulevard widening. Next slide. And lastly, the I-80 improvements that Sparta will fund. Next slide. As you can see, a specific project can yield system-level benefits, like what we see with the traffic alleviation on rural roads in Placer and Sutter counties with the addition of Placer Parkway.
And Linda, I'm just going to mention here,
Sure.
it may be apparent already, but just in terms of the color coding on our maps, green is generally associated with good, and as we progress to a worst-case scenario, we tend to go towards red. So if you see those color changes, that's what they reflect.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so let's go to, let's see. And so here is the impact we see when we widen State Route 65. So green on the right. Next slide.
And before we go to the next slide, I just want to
Sure.
mention on this slide, one thing to note is not just benefits to 65, but currently through some of our traffic forecasts, we've estimated that upwards of 20% of traffic will divert from State Route 65 onto local roads in both Rocklin and Roseville. So the impacts are just not associated purely with highway travel.
And here is the Sierra College Boulevard widening project. Okay. Next slide. So what happens next? Here's our overall project schedule. We finished the first half of the project in September, completing a major update of the Sparta travel model, including developing a user guide and a set of model files for use by any member agency. In May, we started work on the Nexus study update. We are partway through and expect to complete the work on schedule with adoption occurring in June 2022. This milestone is extremely important as the governor recently signed Assembly Bill 602, which will impact our technical work if we extend beyond July 1st, 2022. Throughout this project, there has been outreach to member agencies and external stakeholders. And this concludes today's update. Next time, we will discuss draft fees. And thank you so much for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions from board members regarding this item?
Yeah, Chair Holmes, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
How does modeling now incorporate in the service that happens either to residential or non-residential? Are they counted in the new ITE trip generation rates?
Bruce, would you mind repeating the first part of your question? I did not understand. I think I heard something about service, and I was not sure what you meant by that.
Yeah, so not only are there trips generated from a residence or a business, but there are trips that are generated to those residents, whether they're Amazon Prime or, package delivery or meals or other things like that. How do models these days take into consideration that traffic, either that is not strictly a trip that's generated by a residence or a business employee?
Okay, I think we understand your question, and Don's raising his hand. I think this would be a great question for Don to answer.
Yeah, thanks for setting it up for me. So the way this is done is through cordon counts, or for in the case of residential communities, or driveway counts in the case of businesses, and they're counting vehicles, and so it includes not just the trips from the residents, but all the other vehicles that will enter a residential area, including things like through traffic, but also, as you said, delivery vehicles, moving vans, all kinds of other things. People that are dropping off children or just passing through. So all that is captured within the counts, and the counts are frequently updated. And so as we're getting more and more deliveries, that is being counted in.
Right. And then my second question relates to the set of slides that Linda showed. Those improvements are PM peak. Is that the visualization?
That is correct. That is correct.
40, okay. That's it.
And the intent of the slides is to show that based on the updated model, we feel that the project list is very well targeted to problems that are foreseeable within Placer County. That there are problems that exist that you can show to the public, and that they're going to get worse, and that these specific projects seem to be a very good fit in terms of addressing those problems.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other questions, comments from board members? Any public members? No public members, thank you. Alrighty, thank you very much for that report, really appreciate it. Now we're going to have, the executive director's report.
Mr. Chair, nothing of great extent to mention, other than that, related to the prior presentation, just a comment from me that, that we work at PCTPA on all modes of transportation. And so although we were looking at impacts on the roadway network, we also look at transit, we also look at alternative modes, and including rail and bus systems and that. And so it's just a comment that it's a holistic view of our roadway network, not just one mode or the other. So, other than that, I don't have anything else in terms of an executive director's report today.
Okay, thank you. Item K, board directions to staff. Any board directions to staff?
Just one thing, I want to thank everyone for a great year. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, because we may not see one another other than PCTPA staff. I look forward to you visiting us at the UPS building for a tour. So have a wonderful holiday,
Well,
everyone.
thank you, very nice. Anyone else? Alrighty, informational items are in your, the tech minutes are in your info. And our next regularly scheduled Sparta board meeting is January 26, 2022. Thank you for your kind attention. We are adjourned.